Urgent. Armenia has gone to war against Moscow. Putin's post-Soviet camp is falling apart. There are no more allies, there's no one left to rely on. The empire is left in complete isolation. Yerevan is kicking out Russian railways. Shoigu, in a fit of hysteria, is threatening reprisals and serious consequences. Meanwhile, the Russian economy is heading for total collapse. Bankruptcy will become Russia's national sport. The economy will be wiped out to zero already this year. Russia can't take it anymore. Putin's house of cards has collapsed. How did Kremlin economists flee to Kazakh media to tell the truth? And how will the railway war end? All the details right now. Watch until the end. My respects. I'm Andrei Silakov and this is the Ukraine channel. Today we'll discuss the latest news. Putin's post-Soviet empire has collapsed. The dictator is left alone.
Terrible, just terrible. Well, it's terrible.
Total collapse has struck the Kremlin. There, where it was least expected. Even those who temporarily did business with Moscow are now fleeing from it as if it were the plague. Right now, a real railway war has broken out between Moscow and Yerevan. Armenia is rushing toward the west and is knocking Moscow out.
Was this the right thing to do or not?
Pashinyan's government is preparing a tough nationalization of its railways in order to finally kick out Putin's monopoly of Russian railways from the country. Yerevan's goal is clear. They desperately need American investors to launch the large-scale Trump route, which will connect the country with Turkey and Azerbaijan. The Russian noose around Armenia's neck no longer works. Russia's Security Council Secretary Shoigu is furious. He claims that no one can replace the great Russian carrier. But as they say, no one is irreplaceable.
I won't judge the competence of other countries in managing their railway systems, but I can confidently say that it is unlikely any other company will be able to fully replace the Russian carrier, which has been working in Armenia for a long time and effectively under far from easy conditions.
A panic has started in the Kremlin. Moscow has realized that it is losing the Caucasus forever. Shoigu, meanwhile, has resorted to outright blackmail, threatening Yerevan with potentially serious consequences. Local pro-Russian puppets like former President Kocharyan are screaming that America is dangerous. But the house of cards has collapsed. No threats will save the Kremlin's isolation anymore. And
now the Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, states that the country's railways being under concession to a Russian company is scaring off potential partners, hindering regional projects, and he is considering transferring the management of the Armenian railway network to a country that is friendly to both Russia and Armenia.
Pashinyan is issuing a tough ultimatum and is kicking Russian railways out without ceremony. He is ready to break the onerous contract with Putin's monopoly by force if necessary. Yerevan desperately needs American investors to launch the large-scale Trump route, which will connect the country with Turkey and Azerbaijan. In the new campaign, 74% must come from the USA. Yerevan understands this perfectly well. Russia's toxic presence will instantly scare off any Western money.
It is worth noting that earlier, Pashinyan called on the Russian leadership to restore the Akurik, Kars, and Yerevan railways. These connect Armenia with Turkey and Azerbaijan. He even raised this issue with President Putin in December of last year in St. Petersburg.
The Kremlin is trying to steal the American project but gets its hands slapped. Moscow brazenly claimed rights to a 43-kilometer section of the new route, citing old documents from 2008. In response, Pashinyan issued an ultimatum. Either Russia hands over the management of the railways to a third country, or Armenia will simply take control of the tracks by force.
If the JSC LLC does not take up the restoration of these lines, Armenia will take matters into its own hands. The Armenian Prime Minister essentially hinted that Yerevan is ready to take control of the Yerevan-Kazakh and Akurian-Kars railways. As a result, in recent days, the Russian side was forced to announce that it is discussing the possibility of restoring sections of the railway connecting Armenia with Turkey and Nakhchivan.
They even threw their main Putin puppet, former President Robert Kocharyan, into the fray. He is shouting that Trump's route is dangerous, and he is proposing an absolutely insane plan to ditch the Americans and restore the old Soviet railway to Russia through occupied Abkhazia.
No one is mentioning that Armenia has another option for railway communication with Russia. Yerevan, Tbilisi, Sochi, Krasnodar, Tuapse, Moscow. This railway exists, but it is not operational due to the Georgian-Abkhaz conflict. It is 600 to 700 kilometers shorter than the route through Azerbaijan. Passenger service could also be launched along this route. As soon as this route opens, not a single wagon will be transported through Azerbaijan. Not pursuing this is simply a crime. Very little funding is required for restoration.
The Kremlin wants to lure Georgia into its trap as well. Moscow's plan is cynical and pathetic. They are trying to force Tbilisi to agree to the Abkhaz transit. But for Georgia, this would mean de jure giving up its own sovereign territories for the sake of Putin's whims. This cheap imperial blackmail no longer works. No one wants to deal with a sinking ship. The Trump route is being launched, and it will bury Russia's logistical influence in the Caucasus forever. Meanwhile, Russia's own economy has entered a steep dive. Russia cannot withstand the war it started itself. Elite Kremlin economists from Moscow State University and the Academy of Sciences have realized that the ship is sinking. And since people in Russia are imprisoned for telling the truth, they found a brilliant loophole to leak shocking insider information en masse through Kazakh media. Their verdict is devastating. By 2026, Putin's economy will simply be wiped out.
The problems currently facing our economy are primarily caused by the burden of conducting military operations. Sanctions also have some impact to a certain extent.
First and foremost, they affect the extraction of natural resources.
Bankruptcy will become a national sport in Russia. A perfect storm is sweeping away Putin's stability. A decline has been recorded in 70 out of 92 industrial sectors. The empire's largest non-financial companies can no longer pay their debts and are plunging into the abyss. And the once great Gazprom has lost Europe forever. Now it pumps gas to China, for a pittance, working literally just for the idea. The historical bottom has been breached. The end of this regime is inevitable.
This will become a serious problem for several sectors of the Russian economy, and it could lead to a significant increase in restructurings or even bankruptcies.
Putin's oil needle has finally broken. The main breadwinner of the Russian budget has simply died. Oil and gas revenues have collapsed by 24%. The coal industry has been thrown all the way back to the turbulent 1990s, recording hundreds of billions of rubles in losses. It has reached the point of absolute absurdity. Now, it's not oil that feeds Russia, but the state that subsidizes the oil companies. The old oil fields are so depleted and waterlogged that the Kremlin is forced to eliminate duties and hand out benefits.
Sanctions have dealt a heavy blow to the domestic oil industry. In 2025, the EU agreed on a package of sanctions against Russia, affecting nearly 200 shadow fleet tankers, 30 companies involved in the trade of dual-use goods, and 75 individuals and organizations. In 2025, the European Union Council announced that it had extended the 19 packages of sanctions against Russia until July 31st, 2026. In
the budget of the pseudo-empire, a hole the size of the Mariana Trench has formed. The financial deficit has skyrocketed and hit a catastrophic 5.6 trillion rubles. To plug this black hole, the Putin regime is unleashing wild tax terror, squeezing the last drops out of small businesses and ordinary citizens. Analysts state a terrifying fact. The Russian economy is rapidly sliding back to the miserable Soviet model. Every last penny of resources is being devoured by Putin's war machine. This generates rampant inflation, which simply kills the entire civilian sector.
Production of goods in the interests of the armed forces generates income that is not backed by consumer goods and services. The resulting imbalance has inflationary consequences, and efforts to combat it suppress civilian activities. These problems will persist until the end of the special military operation.
Put your teeth on the shelf. Russia is plunging into a pit of hunger. The regime's economy has hit absolute rock bottom. A staggering 40% of all Russians' income is spent on basic food products. The rest is sucked up by utilities and mortgage payments. But even pouring the entire budget into the fridge doesn't save the situation. Food prices are skyrocketing, outpacing any wages. When will the empire be hit by real wartime hunger and a ration card system? Let's break it down right now.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. Today we will hold the first meeting on economic issues in the new year, 2026.
The war will have to be paid for. We
are setting an example for everyone of how not to live and how not to survive.
sanctions, isolation, the breaking of supply chains. There will be no more cheap goods.
Do you eat beef often?
I don't eat it at all. I don't eat meat at all. So what?
Restaurants are closing and food is getting more expensive.
Because prices for everything are rising and incomes are not increasing. I lost my job altogether in a...
Putin's Russia, a special operation to tighten our belts is beginning. Oh.
Can I swear? But I'm for culture. So things are really bad.
Why?
Go to Pyaterochka.
I'm not satisfied at all, not satisfied at all. When it comes to meat, listen, I really feel sorry for those people who buy meat. It's so hard for them.
Even vodka has become a luxury for Russians. The minimum price for 0.5 liters has soared to 400 rubles.
I received your subtle hint regarding whether this situation will last forever. The answer is, of course, not.
Officials keep insisting that people are just making things up themselves.
I picked some fresh berries.
Don't worry, Putin has already taken care of you and even equalized the prices for rent and...
This includes your monthly utilities, such as water, gas, and electricity. Everything. The train is going now.
According to plan. Despite record high utility payments, another increase is expected in the fall.
The utility bill came to 12, 20, even 30,000 for equipment. In
Novorossiysk, only prices are going up, not salaries.
That's the kind of roller coaster it is. Businesses are shutting down en masse because of rising taxes. Companies are becoming unprofitable. And no one goes to shopping malls anymore. Take a look at what the shopping aisles look like. It's all just rental spaces. After 27 years in business, a well-known Russian designer clothing brand has announced its closure.
to survive 2026, to understand what's happening, to get a feel for things.
Now 40% of their income, the average Russian spends on food. This is according to the latest data from Rosstat. Cucumber prices in Russia have skyrocketed. From the end of December to February 2nd, their price jumped by as much as 43%. People started comparing their cost not only to shrimp but also to imported fruits.
We live in amazing times. Mango.
Bit higher. Costs less than local cucumbers.
Sales of these vegetables are now being limited by weight per customer.
Just wait till you see this. Look, cucumbers. 639 rubles. Take a look. 639.
In the Moscow region, a pack of 2 tomatoes costs 890 rubles. Third-grade fruits and vegetables have appeared in stores. Rotten parts are cut off, and as it turns out, there is strong demand for these trimmings. The Ministry of Agriculture explained the rise in cucumber prices as a seasonal issue, while in the State Duma, officials recommended that Russians grow cucumbers at home on their windowsills instead of waiting for prices to drop. To hide the real situation, stores are listing prices not per pack but per gram on the price tags.
They have the right to set the price per 100 grams for goods that already have a certain weight. The price should be for the whole package.
Young people say it's easier to go to a neighboring country to buy groceries than to try to get by in Russia.
A review of stores in Kazakhstan. Right away, it's striking that all the names are in Russian, so you won't get confused. I really like the variety of products. Look, this is my favorite pate. At Pyaterochka, I bought it for about 130 rubles. Here it costs 169. That's about 75 to 80 rubles.
This was the situation in Russia back in 2008. The crisis was compared to the Great Depression of the 1930s. In the 21st century, Putin has driven the country into poverty.
It's a consequence of a much bigger question, which I don't want to answer.
You can see what's happening in the country. You do understand where all the money is going, right? Well, that's just how it is here.
The Kremlin dictator is draining billions from the Russian budget to continue the war against Ukraine and is scraping the last pennies from Russians' pockets.
You see, the government, Putin says, yes, this is just a short spike. By February, everything will calm down, but that's not true. The thing is, right now we're seeing the first blow, a rise in prices, and then the impact will ripple down the chain. But as you understand, everyone will see a 2% increase. So of course, the state will return something, will offset something. But now a general price increase is about to begin. And as far as we know, already aware of this increase, many food suppliers warned retailers at the end of last year that they were planning to raise prices in the first quarter. Their wholesale prices at which they sell to retailers by 15 to 20%.
The Russian economy ended 2025 with catastrophic figures. And this is not even the peak yet. In Russia, in 2026, almost everything will become more expensive. Everything. Housing, electricity, communications, and even dentistry. And the Kremlin continues to try to hide and ignore the economic consequences of its war against Ukraine, Western sanctions, and disastrous decisions in economic policy.
We'll see, of course. However, the general expectation among experts is that this specific period will be relatively short-term in nature.